Hello and welcome to this month's social media Q&A with the one and only Ravi Shukle, country manager at Agora Pulse UK. Hey Ravi, how are you doing?
Hey Lucy, nice to be back again and super excited about today's topic and can't wait to get stuck in.
Yeah, I can't wait. So this week we're going to be answering questions. Well, Ravi's going to be answering questions around being a social media manager. And Ravi has obviously had a fantastic social media management career and has got loads and loads of advice and tips and that kind of thing to share with you. So feel free to comment wherever you are, whether you're on LinkedIn or whether you're on Facebook or Facebook group. Feel free to just say hello, ask a question, and we will be here to answer them for you over the next kind of 45 minutes or so. This is supported by Agora Pulse, which is an amazing social media management tool. So it's the perfect topic to talk about as well. And I'm Lucy, if you don't know who I am already. You probably do if you're watching on LinkedIn, because this is my LinkedIn profile that we're streaming off of. And I'm the founder of Digital Women. And we're a community set up to empower 1 million people or more through the sharing and learning of digital skills. So Ravi, do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about you before we crack on and start asking and answering the questions?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for the introduction. The video intro always makes me feel like some kind of mini celeb with the trailer. So that was cool. So my background, in terms of social media management, I've been doing this now for just over 10 years. And all I've been doing is social media manager roles all the way up till today. Obviously, my role today is different from 10 years ago, but it started off working with Samsung UK and it's gone all the way into agencies, in-house, and now, as Lucy mentioned, to Agora Pulse, which actually helps me talk about social media even more because it's a social media management software. So been very fortunate to be able to do this for the last 10 years and obviously answer all your questions. And compared to where I started to where I am now, I'm still learning and experiencing new things. So yeah, it'll just be fun answering your guys' questions and things that maybe you experienced working for a company or even working in your own company doing social media.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited about this session because I myself do have some experience of being a social media manager as well. Of course, now we run a social media agency, and we're very lucky to have Jade and Katie and the team there who are our social media managers now. So I'm actually going to start off by asking you a question. And I guess my first question is, for people who are thinking, how do I get into social media marketing or become a social media manager? How do I do that? So Ravi, how did you get started personally? And then let's think about how other people can get started in today's kind of...
Yeah, sure. I think it's actually the same way I got started back 10 years ago. It's probably the same way you could get started today. Well, the difference being when I first wanted to become a social media manager, when I first learned this is what you could do as a job, there wasn't a degree on it, or there wasn't even separate qualifications apart from a broader marketing one. So to get started in the job, it had to be self-taught. And what that basically means is read the latest social media news and blog and tips and what's happening in the world of social. Because as a social media manager, one of the first things you're going to be asked to do is how can we apply what's happening in our company or in the real world to our company social media channel. So first thing is read up on it, and more importantly, practice what you read. So when I first started, obviously, I would read all the blogs, all the information, and I would test that out on maybe my own social profiles. And then I also started blogging myself, sharing in what I've learned. Because you are going to be starting your first ever role with probably little to no experience with a company. But I think in today's climate, the easiest way is to read the latest blogs. Don't be afraid to freelance and test your expertise. Like if you learn how to write posts or create beautiful images for Instagram, for example, potentially offer that up as a service on like Upwork or any of Fiverr or any of these freelancing websites, just so you can get some feedback. And thanks to LinkedIn and all these other social networks, you could actually learn from other people who have been doing it for a very long time, even through Q&As like this. So you can go into the interview prepared. So even if someone says, have you got experience in creating content? You can be like, well, not directly for a company, but I have been creating content for these pages and show them practical examples without having all the bullet points on your CV. So that would be a good way for you to stand out and show you're proactive rather than waiting for your first job to get the experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ravi. So would you say you're a self-taught kind of social media marketer?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can never know everything about social media to say you're fully qualified, only because you could wake up tomorrow and Facebook changes, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, Periscope, you name it. So you have to keep up with what they implement, what they advise, and what they suggest, just so you can apply that to your company and organization. So it's a very much self-taught industry, and the way you're going to stay on top of that is probably keep on top of what's happening in the news, but more importantly, test what you learn, so you could be the kind of go-to person in your organization, and that way you'll get value from it, and you'll be able to build a good long career.
Right, absolutely. So it's really, really important, guys, that you kind of get out there, you learn what's going on at the moment in social media, and try and look for courses and that kind of thing, I guess, as well, to see if you can.
Definitely.
There's loads of really great ones, isn't there, in Google, and also like Facebook Blueprint and that kind of thing. I think Agorapulse has one as well, even. Just so many out there, so definitely take a look. So somebody here, I don't know who the name is because you haven't got it, just says Facebook user. Ravi, how would you define the role of a social media manager in 2021? And do you think there's still confusion around precisely what social media managers do? That's a great question, Facebook user.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
That's a really good question. Before we went live today, me and Lucy were just saying this very same thing. To define the role of a social media manager in 2021, unfortunately, it hasn't changed too much over the years. And what I mean by that is companies will still expect the social media manager to do all the content creation, the reporting, potentially the ads as well, all the management between clients like agencies or in-house, and all of the communications that way, and obviously all the social media strategy, and lastly even the customer service. So there's almost 6 hats into one role. The only difference in 2021 is because awareness of this is slowly rising, the companies that have a good culture around their staff and social media managers do offer support and training. And the ones who are really clued on will actually have a graphic designer do graphics separately. They'll have an ads person do ads separately. And then you could really just own the social media content and organic strategy and the posting, because that's what I believe your social media management skills can start off with as a base. And the confusion is going to be there because a social media manager, in brackets, links to all other types of marketing. It links to your email, it links to your blog, it links to the content you create on your channel. So a company would just think, I can hire, instead of hiring 6 different people, I'd rather want one social media manager to do it all. So just be clear if you're applying for any jobs that you understand the roles and responsibilities, because majority of companies will be wanting you to do at least 5 or 6 of those different things. And don't be afraid to ask, to say, my experience in paid might not be as high, so is there potential for you to bring someone to help with this?
Absolutely. And you answered that really well. And we were saying, weren't we, Ravi, that if with some smaller companies, they don't often have the budget to be able to employ, the person who knows about the ads and the maths and then somebody who can do graphics and somebody who's super organized and all that kind of thing. So if you are working for smaller companies and small businesses, you do almost have to be that one-stop shop. Especially if you're a freelancer, you almost are doing all of those things. So it's not a bad idea to kind of brush up on all of those skills, but charge accordingly. I think that's really, really important. But yeah, so it's social media manager. I think you answered that really well, Ravi, actually.
Yeah, I think just on that, with a small business owner, they're usually more open to having a conversation with the individual, whereas a corporate company just is like, just get it done. Whereas a smaller company will be like, oh, actually, they'll understand a bit more what you're doing for them, and you can probably be more realistic with what you can actually create as an output. Like, could I do 5 posts a day on 3 different social networks alongside customer service? But probably not. So you can be realistic with the small business owner and be like, this is what I can manage within this time, and this is what we can deliver, and then help them understand it that way. And usually they should be more open-minded, whereas a corporate company might take a little longer for that to actually happen, where they give you specific tasks rather than giving you everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's different. I think it's different depending on where you are, isn't it, or where you go for work. Sue says she's that one-stop shop. And another Facebook user, so the person who commented before was Ruth, so thank you for that.
Thanks for that, Ruth.
And this Facebook user says, is it a good idea to niche down? And I've started to focus on community building and find I have more inquiries. Plus, it's certainly the area I thrive in. Great question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Short answer, yes. The main word here is thrive in. Means two things in terms of you're really good at it, and also it means that you enjoy it. Enjoy being the key word, right? Because we don't want to be stuck in an admin style role where we're doing things that we don't love, because you'll fall out of love out of the position, and then you'll be looking for the next opportunity or challenge. And obviously your client or company then suffers. If you niche down, like say I really love designing and it was what I really enjoyed, that part of social media, maybe create a content marketing service where you can deliver content for social channels, and that way you're not doing customer service, ads, or all the other stuff that's involved in the role, and you'll build your client portfolio a lot higher, because your clients will be like, this person really loves designing, his work is great, and you can just do that all day long. That's not realistic for everyone, but if you can find what you enjoy doing, then definitely niche down. And if you get inquiries, like Lucy said, it really helps to brush up on your overall skills, because if a content guy turns around and says, well, how do I promote it using ads? You also want that knowledge so you can expand your services and do it that way. But hopefully that's helped. I would definitely look at niching if it's what you enjoy, because it's going to be scalable then for you.
Absolutely. And I will just add to that as well, Ravi, that it's really important to set boundaries. Like, just remembering, I used to have lots of clients on the go that I was juggling all the time. And essentially I was everything to them in social media. And then you become more than just social media marketer. You become the person who updates the Google, the Google My Business and all of these other things. You're suddenly doing this role of a complete, like an administrator, digital social media marketing person at the whole marketing department. And I think sometimes when you're starting out and you do that, you don't have the boundaries in place. Like, knowing what I know now, I would say, like, this is a service, this is a service, this is a service, and it doesn't go beyond that. And if you want something that goes beyond that, then you're either going to have to train me to do that because I don't do it, or and pay for me to get that training perhaps, or you're going to have to pay extra, or I can help you find someone else to bring in, kind of thing. Just setting boundaries and being honest from the beginning is really important.
Yeah, and it technically it's not a bad thing, but the boundaries is really important, because not a bad thing in the sense that they trust you so much, they want you to do everything. But as long as, like you said, you can build that boundary, then you're not going to burn out, which is a real thing in the world of social media, especially for managers. Like, getting overwhelmed is an everyday thing, it feels like. So boundaries is very important, especially communications, because if you're freelancing, if you're in a company, you log off at the end of the day. If you're a freelancer, you can get messages 8, 9, 10 at night, because they just don't really understand that you're not their go-to for any time. So having that boundary will save you a lot of time, and also for your mental health, it's good to kind of have that time to close off and have your own personal time to yourself.
Absolutely. Also, I think with community management roles, sometimes you are expected to work, around the clock as well. So even when you work for a company, there is that aspect of, we need to be replying to people within an hour or within a certain amount of time when they're posted, even if that's at midnight. So I don't know how that works if people are taking shifts and that kind of thing, but definitely something to be aware of if you're working for a very busy brand or a very big brand on social media. Anyway, so moving on to the next question. Thank you so much, Ravi. That was fantastic. Our next question is on rates to charge. So
yes,
this is a Facebook user again. So as a freelancer, what's a good rate to charge, especially if it's a small company and you have to cover everything? So she's talking about like all the aspects, I guess, of social media, which is, I think this is, I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer to this question, because I've empathy on both sides, for the social media manager and the business owner side of things.
Yeah, sure. So there's loads of different ways you can charge for something like this. But if you're a freelancer and you have to cover everything, the best way to manage your time is to have it in a tailored package for them and make it monthly. If you charge hourly, it's very difficult, because let's just say I don't understand reporting as well as content creation. Now, if it takes me 2 hours to do a report, the client's going to be like, well, you done your content in 1 hour. Why are you spending double the time? So you don't want to be micromanaged per hour unless it's a small task. Like if you got me to make 7 posts, I could give you a time frame because I know what it takes. But doing everything from your question, I would say this is the fee for the month, and this is exactly what you get for that fee, which will be a posting, a weekly report, a weekly call or email, and you'd get a content plan, for example. So knowing what they get every month and what you'll be sending them sets the boundaries, like we talked about earlier. A flat rate just protects you, because if they mention stuff outside your agreement, whereas if you charge for time, they'll be like, oh, I'll slap in another 5 hours to his time, and you'll end up working 15-hour days. Whereas a flat monthly, when they say we want additional work, you charge them for the additional, and again, you can fit it into your own time. So it might be better initially to do that if it's smaller tasks like consulting or power hour or something that you can manage on a small time basis. Then definitely do it per hour. But majority of the time, having a tailored package being the key word for them is going to help them manage their expectation, because they'll understand that this is what you can get them. In terms of costs, it's very hard to say because I don't know the size of the company, but if you're doing all of that service, you don't want to be going less than, like, we're in the UK, so like £300-400 a month, like minimum, if you're doing one profile or something, if you're doing all those things, and scale it up based on what they ask you to do.
That's such a great answer, Ravi. Thank you. I hope that answered your question. Facebook user, if you put your name in, let us know who you are. That would be amazing. I'm going to come on to Lisa's question in a minute. But I just wanted to ask you a question in the meantime, because it's a question that we get asked a lot, actually. So with business people who are hiring in a social media manager, social media has kind of been highlighted as everything you need. Like, this is everything. You don't need anything else. As long as you've got social media, you're going to be fine, which we know is not true. Like, there's other things that go into running a business other than having a great social media presence. So then what happens is the business owner puts the social media manager on this pedestal and thinks that they're the be all and end all, and this person's going to help me get to my business revenue goals and that kind of thing. And of course, the social media manager knows they can do things, but they're not going to make the business, all the money that they need. So how does the business manager manage, the social media manager manage the business owner's expectations to explain to them, this is what return on investment you're going to get. And if they're not doing paid social media and it's just the posting element of things, how do they explain to them that just posting on social media actually probably isn't going to get you a return on investment for quite some time, actually, until we've built that community and that audience? Yeah,
that's a great question. The simple answer is you have to showcase your understanding of social media as the go-to. And what I mean by that is, if you are hiring me as a social media manager, it'd be my job to say, well, organic social, for example, is great at building website traffic, brand awareness, and obviously engagement. If you've got special offers and stuff, even organically, they could do well because people love a deal. But realistically, based on your previous months or whatever it is, you're going to get a steady flow of traffic from social, even if it's initial. You'll get engagement, people will be talking about you, and you'll always get customer service stuff. So if someone asks a question about product or service, they could potentially turn into sales. So I think it's important to be realistic with that output and say that it's realistically going to be increasing followers, increasing engagement, increasing website traffic, because we'll be posting there organically. And via customer service, you may be able to close some sales if people are on the fence or not sure about it, and you manage to help them answer one of their questions or one of their, FAQs that they weren't sure about. So if you can manage the expectation that way and be very realistic with follower numbers, we could do a whole talk about followers and follower numbers, but just make sure they understand growing more followers doesn't equal more business. It will help in the long run, but having 10,000 in the space of a month isn't a realistic goal. So be realistic with the follower numbers and why you've said that, and you'll have a much smoother journey with them. Because the first thing any company wants is, like, we've got 1,000, can we get to 10,000 in 3 months with 0 ads? That's your chance to speak up and be like, that's not going to happen unless we have all these other things in place. Absolutely. And it can be so hard to want to please and just to get the business and then want to please, that then you just run yourself ragged trying to hit these unrealistic figures just, so that you can, meet the expectations of this person who actually, it's your fault in the beginning. You should have just said, this is not actually possible with the time I have. Sorry.
Sorry,
No,
Ravi,
I was just going to say, if you're doing reporting as well, you don't want them to turn around and be like, well, you promised 3,000 likes and I've got 15 this week. So being realistic with how the growth can happen, and mention to them that you're going to base what you can do after you've been running the social for an initial week or two. So you got some numbers, unless they've previously done social, don't second guess that. So say, I'll give you a report and I'll base my findings on what is actually happening week on week, and we can create a number together. Then you'll be a lot more, have a much better relationship with them to manage expectations.
Absolutely. So it's like working in a partnership rather than as, you know, you're here and I'm here kind of thing. I love that, Ravi. Thank you. And Holly just is adding to that, saying that's something that was difficult to understand when becoming a business owner. Social media engagement and return on investment is difficult to imagine if you've not actually done it before.
Yeah, exactly. I think return on investment is associated with like getting profit and sales straight away, whereas return on investment for social media managers can be so many different things. It could be an increase in engagement, awareness, website traffic, even followers. They're all forms of return on investment. It's not just sales. It's what return can they get from social, and it's your job to explain that to them, which will, as a business owner, they'd appreciate, because they'd be able to be more realistic with what's possible and when, obviously.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ravi. And thank you, Holly, for that. And let's come on to Lisa's question now, if that's okay. Lisa from LinkedIn is asking, what do you think are the additional challenges for social media managers with the addition of audio-led platforms? That's a great question. Over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, really good question. So it kind of ties to our original point, like, is the social media manager supposed to do everything? So with the audio-led platforms, who is going to manage the conversation in the community? Because, for example, like Clubhouse, you need to be in the room itself. I think you can have moderators in there, but again, who's going to be the voice of the company? It's not your job as a social media manager to be the face of the company at the same time. Remember, you're just representing the brand. If you're outgoing and you're a bit extroverted and you like cameras and you like live and you like audio, definitely put yourself forward. But again, you're as a social media manager, you're mainly working behind the scenes to help improve and grow their brand. So for audio-led platforms, I think if it's something that you can manage as a moderator or keep an eye on, that's how you'd approach it as a social media manager. The challenge is going to be who is going to deliver that audio conversation. Depending on what your business is, they should have a spokesperson, a guest, or an expert that they could use. And your number one job from an audio platform is, how can you measure the success of the conversation? Is it listens, downloads, people attending the meeting room? So to answer your question, the challenge is going to be how to measure success of it, which is all the business owner or client is going to care about. So have some numbers at hand to say this is what you can measure by joining Clubhouse, for example, or having a podcast. And that way they'll understand if something's working and whether it's something they even need to get into in the first place.
Sorry, someone needs one of those. I need one of those cards. Sam needs one of those cards which hands up that says you're on mute. Sorry about that. Thank you for your question, Lisa, and thank you for answering that so brilliantly, Ravi. So I have a question, actually. And guys, don't forget, as you're listening, whether you're on LinkedIn, Facebook, or in Facebook community, feel free to just share your questions with us so that Ravi can answer them for you. Another Facebook user here is saying, talking about this is a service. How can you know what different things fall into the category of different services? Okay, that's a good question.
Yeah, good question. Usually you have three services, give or take. So you have the content service, so creating all the posts and the images and everything like that. To make it easy, you can have a community management service. So for this cost per month, I will do X amount of posts, which means writing the posts, creating the images, and creating the content plan. That's the first phase. Customer service usually is expected of you, but you could potentially have that as a small additional charge. And the only reason I'm saying that is because managing customer service is a whole different ballgame. Like, you'd have to have access to all the FAQ support, everything. Obviously, as part of your community manager role, if you're engaging and replying to people, that's fine. But if they want you to actively be the go-to person for all their social media customer service, that could be something that you suggest to them, which is outside the usual community management. And advertising as well, that's a separate service. It's not part of the role. So you'd have the organic social, which would be the content management, you'd have customer service, and then you'd have the paid social. I think those three pretty much would cover it all. Now, depending on how busy the company is with customer service, etc., you may just throw it into the community management package. But if it's a client like one of the ones I used to work for was like a phone repair, like if you dropped your phone and the screen smashed, you could repair it. They were getting loads of inquiries. So that's actually a separate, skill base to just stay on top of those. If that can't be filtered to customer service via like Zendesk or Help Scout or all these other kind of tools, then you'd have to make sure you let them know to manage that would be an additional. So think of it as community management, which includes managing the conversation and the content, the advertising, and then the customer service.
What about, so there's this other thing that I think is hugely valuable, Ravi, and that's when people ask you to build a community for them. Okay, it is so challenging and so hard to actually build an engaged community, which of course is completely different to building an audience as well. A community, like we've got with Digital Women, we have this amazing community, and it's very, very, very labor intensive and very difficult to do, and you really need to know your stuff inside and out. Is that a different service, and does that come under the social media manager remit? And should people be charging more for that type of thing because they're actually building this community, from the ground up?
Yeah, really good question. The short answer, yeah, it's completely separate. And the only reason I say this is community management. What I talked about just now, your content and your post, is just that. It's just managing your content, your posting strategy, what you say, how you say it, who you say it to. You're creating all of that as a service. And then you're designing the images, videos, or audio to match that. And that's one skill set for your community management. The building a group is completely different because whether it's public or private, it's a niche community of like Digital Women, for example. And if someone said, can you make a Digital Women 10,000, I want to get it to 10,000 in 6 months or whatever, it's a separate service to find all the women that would be suitable for the show, to create the events, the landing page. These are all the strategies you'd have to give as a service. And as a social media manager, your job technically isn't to bring people to the group, because that's the job of ads. So you have to charge additional, like we said. Your job in there is going to be to manage the community. So when people come into the group, your service charge would include nurturing them, welcome messages, regular page updates every day, asking them questions, being the go-to voice to make sure the community is exciting, and then it grows by people referring it. But they need to have a separate strategy for how we're going to get these people in. And it's usually ads initially, or contests or events. So I'd mention that to them. But hopefully that answers your question, Lucy. But I think it should fall outside your community manager remit, because it's a whole nother job just to grow that. And the audience might be different from the group compared to your company page.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for clearing that up, Ravi. So this was the question I was going to ask you, actually. Actually, let's go to this Facebook user question quickly, which is less about social media management and more kind of like about, I guess, tactics. So Facebook engagement is lower at the moment for this person, and they want to know, what would you suggest?
Sure. It's hard to suggest something specific because I don't know why it's low. But the obvious answer would be organic reach is naturally low. It's like 1 to 2%, right? So on an average 1,000 fan page, you're probably getting like maybe 50 to 100 reach and like 3 to 5 likes, which sounds can be demotivating to hear something like that. But it doesn't mean that people don't engage. It just means initially a lot fewer people will see the posts. So to answer your question, what I'd suggest for lower engagement, you need to grab people's attention in the newsfeed, because that's where they're seeing your content. Video content is obviously going to be the best thing to stop them scrolling. Your images, how are you creating them? Is it just stock photos? Is it just text? Have you mixed things up? Psychology wise, the images with people in it, like if me and Lucy had our image for today, it does better than just social media Q&A in big text, because you like to see and understand the people you're talking to or getting the chance to meet. So have some faces and lifestyle stuff within your imagery. You don't have to be a video expert to create the videos. There's tools like InVideo that you can use to create short, or Lumen 5, I think, that you can create short snippets of video that you can turn into an actual social video. So you just type in the text, you upload your images, and it turns it into a 1-minute video. So use more media rich content such as images and video, and maybe even Facebook Live if you're feeling confident enough. Remember, the goal is to stop people scrolling, and those type of posts will obviously do best. Or ask an open-ended question about your business that you think people would like to have a conversation on or engage in. So those things should help spike the numbers up.
Fantastic. That was great advice, Ravi. Thank you so much. Now, I think we should get around to my question, which I think is a very important one. So for those people who are not already social media managers, this is for, or people who are thinking about becoming, or they're just starting to become social media managers, what is a typical day in the life of a social media manager like?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. It does differ from everyone, but I'll give you a typical day. So you'd obviously come into the office, and first thing you're going to do is check your social media channels. It's really tempting to be that guy or girl that has it on their phone, but my advice is don't do that, because you'd never switch off. Like, you'd always be checking your phone when you're at home or on the weekend. So you don't really want to do that. So typical day, you come in, you'd log in, you'd check your social media channels. If you're using a social media tool, then you'd look into the inbox to see all the comments and mentions that have been happening the night before, like 5 or 6 o'clock from the previous evening. You'd reply to all of those. Next, you'd look at all the active social media campaigns you're working on. So you may have an event this week, like our social media manager Q&A. Have you planned the post in advance for that? Have you sent out the tweets? Have I tagged Lucy correctly to make sure she's going to know about it a few days before? So you look at what's happening that week. Thirdly, while you're looking at that, you're going to be looking at your emails. Unfortunately, I'd love to find someone out there that has a job with no emails. Maybe if you're outdoors or doing something cool, but all of us have to deal with it. So you look at your emails to see if there's any questions or comments from clients, usually feedback on posts. So whether you're a company or whether you're a social media manager going to work for a company, you're always going to have feedback on your content. The image is too big. I want a cat there instead of a dog, whatever it may be. You usually get that feedback via email. So you're going to clear your inbox. And then if you're responsible for paid advertising, etc., that's there as well. And then as the day moves forward and you've answered emails, you've planned, you've replied to people, the strategy part comes in. So how can you showcase your value? You're going to plan new content for the following week. You're going to suggest ideas to your client or your boss to be like, oh, hey, bank holiday, I think we could do some really good posts about barbecues outside or whatever it may be. The idea stuff will be there. And that's kind of like a typical day. You might get more emails than someone. You might get more feedback on content than the others, but a typical day would be spaced out like that, and you'll be doing more or less of the different things depending on what your company or niche is.
Wow, so it's a big job, right? There's a lot going on, isn't there, in life of a social media manager?
Yeah, the good news is you do get better at it the more you do it, because you'll be able to build like a process or a way of doing things. Then you'll have your certain days. You might be like, Tuesday's my content day, I do reporting on it. You'll be able to create your own routine around what you do every day. But a typical day usually involves a bit of everything until you find that routine. So don't be afraid as a new social media manager if you're not sure what that routine is. Just try and do those small things that I mentioned. And as the weeks go on, you'll get a groove of how things how your client or your boss likes to handle things, and you'll start being able to manage it in your own way.
Yeah, social media managers seem to be like rock stars, don't they? Like, with all the different things that they can handle and do. And that brings me on to like another question, actually, because lately, especially in the UK, we've seen some really great communications, especially on Twitter, from social media managers. And that might be like an agency, for example, that is working across several brands, and the brands are talking to each other on social media and they're collaborating. But it just makes for great watching, like viewing, doesn't it? From for fans and that kind of thing, or brand advocates or whatever, or just people who just love brands or just love their products or whatever. It's just great to watch. How does a social media manager kind of go about doing something like that? If they work for a brand, how would they go about getting that signed off first of all? Because the brand's got to be really brave to do something like that. And then how do they go about being able to collaborate with other brands as well, if they're not all part of the same, kind of agency management team?
Yeah, really good question. So in marketing or in social media marketing, we have something called tone of voice, which sounds all technical. Basically means it's a document a company creates to tell you how they'd like to talk to their customers. So if I was selling like computer motherboards for some random reason, I might have a really technical way of describing the products or services. But the tone of voice, you should actually, because for customer service, it's very important to be human and natural. Like the last thing I would want is a very technical reply to some question about, we're sorry, but the time you inquired, we haven't got back to something because of, like an actual corporate way of speaking. Whereas if you sign off with your name, which a lot of companies now are starting to allow, you can use your natural voice to be like, oh, thanks for getting back to me, Sarah. Really sorry about that, but let me take a look at this for you right now. So you're kind of speaking how you speak, and it's not as corporate. And that way, when the person's especially complaining about something, they'll be a bit more at ease that a real person's looking into it. So to answer your question about the trends, speak to your boss and manager about tone of voice. If they don't have a plan and they're like, well, we don't know what a tone of voice is, suggest to them in situations where you find businesses that are in the same industry, are you open for us to showcase our personality? So maybe share something a bit fun. Like you mentioned in the UK social media stuff, like the Cuthbert stuff, the Weetabix stuff, the agencies and brands behind it have allowed their social media managers to have some fun with it. Obviously, that needs to get approved. So what you do is have a system where if I think of these posts and they happen in real time or something's trending, who do I speak to? And if it's the owner, if you're a small business, drop them an email, let them know what you're going to say. If it's a corporate company, find the head of marketing or communications to obviously tell them that this is what I plan to post. The only thing you need to be careful of is imagery. So if I was Nike and I was talking about Adidas for some weird reason, avoid all imagery for brands and logos, because you could get into trouble about that because you're saying something negative, or humor can be taken the wrong way as well, which you don't want to risk. But if you're just replying back and you're having fun with it, then yeah, the text updates just need to be approved by someone. So have a system with your boss or your head of marketing or your team leader to say, when I think of stuff like this, can I send it to you for approval? And it's your job to convince them that this would be a great idea and why. So that's another conversation, but hopefully if they can see your thinking behind it, they should be more open-minded.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just again, I keep saying great advice, Ravi. It's really good advice, and I would agree with that completely. So I think I've just got another question to ask, and before we kind of like round up, I think, and then I'll ask you to round up with your, top advice on being a social media manager, of course.
Yeah,
but
sure.
if anybody else has any questions, please don't be shy. Just type in the comments, and we will read it out, and Ravi will answer the question. But I want to know, what do you think? Because you've got, again, lots of responsibilities as a social media manager. Oftentimes, you're the front of house for this brand, and you're being the brand, talking with them, that kind of thing. So, and we've seen mistakes have been made as well sometimes. Like it's just people just haven't like got it quite right, or they've missed the mark, and then it's blown up in the press and that kind of thing. So it's scary, right? So what is the biggest mistake a social media manager can make? And how do they, and once they've made a mistake, how do they kind of like come back from it or rectify that mistake that they've made?
Yeah, I think the short answer is you are going to make mistakes because we're human, right? Like, just to give you an example, it was during the kind of Olympic time, but this was before Boris Johnson, was prime minister, etc. So he was playing tennis with David Cameron. Don't ask me why. But the point is, he was playing in Piccadilly Circus, and I think I was just right behind him, so I took a photo, and in my tweet I spelled Piccadilly Circus wrong, and it went out and it tagged both of them in it, so it went pretty far. It wasn't like a meltdown, but then at the same time, it's just one missing letter, so it will happen. The thing you need to do, if you're a big company, have a good relationship with the PR team, because when stuff like this happens, unless it was like really over the top, like you said something you really shouldn't have, it will just get deleted. That's just no brainer. But if it's something like an innocent mistake, like for example, in my one where it was a spelling mistake, you could probably get around it and reply back saying, "Oh, hey, our community manager." So you can have a more human approach to that type of mistake. But have a relationship with your PR company if you're a big company, and have a plan in place to say if something happens or there is these kind of posts, like who is the first person to go to for approval? Because the worst thing you want to do is have such a mistake happen, if it does, and then wait like 5 hours for a response because no one knows who's in charge of it. And if you're a small business, it's easier. You can just talk to the owner and be like, this is how I think we should deal with it. Like there's a famous one, I forgot, the Amy's Bakery. That's like really famous one. I don't know if you've heard of it, Lucy. This lady, the lady went on a rampage, right? So it was like, it went viral because she just went super angry at everyone. From something like that, she just blamed hackers at the end. That's not what we want you to do. If she had come around and said, look, I overreacted, but I'm really passionate about my business, so that's why. Something a bit more human would go down better. It's harder for CEOs and corporates because they're responsible for a lot of impact and change. But if you're a small business owner, if you're starting out on social media and you make these mistakes, have a good relationship with your PR manager or someone who manages communications. And if you're a small business, just speak to the owner and say, look, if something like this happens, do I have the freedom to respond or apologize? And do you want to see those responses just so it gets approved?
It seems like the key here is just, and you always talk about this, Ravi, just having the processes in place and just kind of working out, you know, what could possibly happen, and then having a process or a scenario or a process for those potential scenarios as well. It's just really, really so important.
Yeah, and if you have a process where you can flag if something happens to someone, they'll feel a lot more at ease because they're the first people to hear about it. Last thing you want is your boss out for coffee one day and they just get a tweet with a mistake or something you've said that's totally out of context. So if they feel in the loop, they'll be more accepting to say, like, if this happens, come to me and I'll approve your request. If you're in a big company, PR will have like a statement that they'll want you to put out, and it'd be your job to word it in a more human way. So make sure you have the conversation with your company if you're just joining a big one, and if you're a small one, just be open with your manager or owner of the company to say, if this kind of stuff happens, this is how I'd like to deal with it.
I was just thinking, because it is like literally the worst thing. So you put out a post on social media, like whether it's for a client or a company you're working for, and it's gone out and it's all gone through the system. People have approved it and everything, but it's got a typo or something like that. And then you put it out, everything's okay. And I don't know if this has happened to you, Ravi, but it's definitely happened to me. And you suddenly start getting screenshots of this post sent to you. There's a typo. And I know it's happened to you, Ravi. Like the other day, and I've just it's got some really good action on it on LinkedIn right now, that instead of saying official, it says official. There's an I missing. You didn't notice, but now you're going to go and have a look. It's missing. Getting good traction, so I just left it. I just thought, no, it doesn't matter. And the people who made it noticed as well after I'd already posted it. But yeah, what happens is you start getting these screenshots from people, and they're like, "This is, you know, you've made a mistake," and that kind of thing. You've realized the post has got some good traction on it. You're like, well, I don't really want to take it down, so now I'm just going to have to just say, you know. I think it's human. Like, you're only human, aren't you? So you mistakes happen, and sometimes you miss things. Sometimes 3 or 4 people in the company miss it, and it just goes out because, you know, there's that content blindness. I think sometimes when you're looking at things often. So has it happened to you before, Ravi? When you're replying?
It happens all the time, more than you think. Like, just because someone has 1 year experience and someone has 15, it doesn't mean the 15 experienced guy's not going to go through it. And then what example that you mentioned where you flagged one of my piece of content where there's a spelling mistake, it was actually on an image and it was also in an ad, so it was too late to take it down. Someone in the comments had some funny banter about it, and I was like, oh hey, so if you own up to it in a human way, saying, oh yeah, honest mistake, or didn't mean to do that, or thanks for spotting it, or whatever, that'll usually cure the problem. If it's something you're selling, like a product or service, then you can, like, I use a free Chrome extension called Language Tool. I know there's Grammarly as well. And it'll just underscore everything as you type it to help you avoid those type of things. But when it does happen, just be the first to own up before your customers find out. If they alert you to it, then be the first one to respond and say, thanks for highlighting it. And just do it that way. Don't ignore it. If it's got engagement, they'll rather see that you comment underneath acknowledging it rather than them thinking that this company's not good to work with because they can't even spell properly. That they need to understand it's a normal and natural thing that happens, especially if you're writing hundreds of posts a month.
Absolutely. And Melanie Kukuk, I think it is. I hope I've pronounced that right, Melody. She says, what process do you suggest for typos? And I guess you just kind of answered that question, but I don't know if you're allowed to on it a little bit.
So you can use, the easiest way is to use the free Chrome extensions, like I said, Language Tool or Grammarly, or if you've got a social media tool and you send the post for approval to your client or your boss, then there's obviously another chance to spell check it as before you send it to them. So as you're writing it, obviously check it then. When you get it back from your client to say it's good to go, just double check it, and then use the free tools like Grammarly or Language Tool to just check that as you type it, it actually reads correctly. And there's obviously no spelling mistakes like that as well. So the process is get approval from your boss if you're not sure and you're just starting out. If you are confident, but you just think, hey, I may make a mistake, use some of these free tools to help underline or spot any errors that you might miss. And you can always paste it into free websites like Grammar Checker. Just type Google Grammar Checker, and it's probably like a free Google version where you paste in your sentence and it'll underline stuff. So have a extra validation with those free tools. Brilliant.
Thank you, Ravi. I love Grammarly, actually. I don't think I could live without it. It's just such a good tool. And Damien Elson is saying, for your clients, do you advise to focus on one platform?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. I think we covered a bit of it in our content Q&A as well. I'd advise them to focus on probably two to start with, because one platform is putting all your eggs in one basket, and you really don't want the Facebook to wake up tomorrow and be like, engagement is now 0.5% organic reach or whatever, and that client's like, well, what do we do? They start panicking. So you want at least two social networks to focus on, because they offer different things. So Instagram will be more visual, and and there's only one link in the bio. Twitter, perfect for networking, because you can actually follow and mention anyone you like. And obviously with Facebook or even Instagram, you can use the hashtags to help reach. So each profile has its own benefits, but I definitely pick at least two so they can speak to their customers in more than one place. Because if I don't like Facebook, then you're never going to get my attention there. Whereas if you were also on Instagram or Twitter, that might be an opportunity to engage with them. So choose at least two social platforms and try and master those, and before you fully expand out. And if you already have 5 or 6 profiles, then obviously focus your attention on the ones where you're getting the most content, community, and engagement.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ravi. Damien, I hope that answered your question. So Ruth Fitzsimon is asking, Team Colin or Team Cuthbert? What's your take on the recent Aldi vs M&S battle?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I was, to be honest, I was just enjoying it as a spectator, because I think it started off as like a humorous thing. It's obviously, we've all had some of those cakes, especially if you worked in a company office, like someone's brought it to your desk at some point. So we all are familiar with it, which is why it helped it go crazy. I think the back and forth was interesting. There was some legal stuff and then loads of fun stuff. And I think Aldi probably done really well with that. The way they positioned it, they had more fun with, Cuthbert. Obviously Colin technically is the original one that people think of, but they know how to get away with just enough marketing to call it something different. I think I saw one of their tweets. The only difference between them was like the ridged chocolate body or something is and the ears or something. So I think Aldi got the humor of it and came out well in terms of how they approached it. To answer your question, I'll give Aldi the edge. The take on it is, if you're a business going against, like if it was PG Tips against Tetley, as long as it's not like you don't get into legal situation, because then it's just like everything gets looked at in a legal environment, like what you say, how you say it. If you're having fun on Twitter with back and forth, then engaging a brand like that could be a great fun way to interact, especially with complementary brands like a tea brand engaging with the biscuit brand against toast brand or bread brand or whatever it is. So as a business, you can definitely find those conversations jump into, but make sure there's like a relationship there, or you can relate to it. So in this situation, I'd say I think Aldi done quite well to come on top.
Absolutely. And what was the other one that happened a few weeks ago? The Weetabix.
Yeah, the Weetabix. Yeah. So I think people were weirdly fascinating. Like people say when they watch TV, they're like, it's so entertaining, but it might be nasty, but you just can't look away. It's like that for Weetabix. Like you just can't look away at it. And a lot of TikTokers and YouTubers and everyone tried it. I personally didn't try it, but a lot of people tried it because it was such a weird combination. So I think they did well. They tried to milk it a little bit, because I don't know if you saw the aftermath of it, they started doing other random combinations that didn't quite work, like yogurt or some other type of stuff. I don't know, but it's one of those things where like the timing was just perfect. So everyone jumped on it at the same time, which is obviously why it goes viral and people share it. So if you can find a fun way to talk about something with another, related brand, it could be an amazing opportunity. You just have to be really clever about how you link your brand to theirs.
Absolutely. And I just love that the bigger brands have now got something in place where, they're letting their social media managers have fun like this, because it's so good. It's so entertaining. I love it. I think that's it now for our questions. There is a question about going viral, Damien, but I feel like you're asking the wrong question. I don't think it's you can necessarily go viral. I think that's something that just happens. So if you just keep going with the tactics that Ravi kind of talked about earlier around trying to gain engagement and that kind of thing. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Ravi.
Yeah. You can't plan to go viral. That's the bottom line. However, you can help your chances, but the easiest way to answer that question is you need to find influential people to share the message. If another company called Peterbix breakfast cereal done the same tweet, it would not go viral because Weetabix has already got a base of about hundreds of thousands of followers. So to answer your question, for Surprise Sweet Box, find influencers who do sweets and snacks. And I know BuzzFeed, I think, do loads of people from around the world try different foods. Don't know if you've seen it, Lucy. Pretty hilarious. So like Americans try UK snacks and all this kind of stuff. If you could find that type of audience for your Surprise Sweet Box, you'd get a couple thousand hits and stuff if they were agreed to work with you. So find influential people. It'll help you to get more exposure, but going viral is definitely it's a luck of the draw.
Brilliant, thank you. Again, great advice, Ravi. That's why we have you here, isn't it? Every single month we've got a different topic, and this week it was about being a social media manager. And so if you're not a social media manager, you can see there is a lot that goes into being a social media manager. It's a lot more than just like putting a post up on social media and going viral or hoping that you're going to get loads of sales for your company or making you look really good and that kind of thing. There's more to it. There's all kinds of things, community management. You need to understand maths to do ads. You need to understand, analytics and data and that kind of thing as well. It's not just about being creative. I think in some scenarios, you need to be almost everything, depending on the type of company you're working for and what budget they have for a social media marketer. So there's a lot to think about. But I think one of the biggest takeaways I've had from this, Ravi, is if you want to be a good social media marketer, you need to be tuned in. You need to learn consistently, and you need to always be kind of tuned into what's working for other people, what could work for you. You need to be tuned into kind of like what the trends are. You need to be tuned into also what's changing and what's new in social media, what new platforms are popping up and that kind of thing. And that sounds like a full-time job, in its own sense, actually. However, I think there's enough information out there that people can go and find out how to get the skills they need, as well as, understanding what's hot and what's not and that kind of thing as well. So with that, Ravi, is there anything that you want to, I think I rounded that up okay, but is there anything
that's perfect.
Is there anything you wanted to kind of add to that? Any kind of like top tips for people who want to become a social media manager or who just want to be a better social media manager?
Stay proactive. And what I mean by that is even after 10 years, I'm still reading blogs and posts and stuff because stuff changes all the time. Obviously, as you get more experience, you'll know how to implement it a bit differently. But proactive, to give you an answer that you can actually take away today, would be a small business owner. So if you understand how iOS 14, like I know Lucy's talking about it as well, how it affects Facebook ads, share that with your business owner, share that with your client, and give them some tips on what they could do to overcome that. Your value would then go through the roof. The more you can be proactive and showcase your expertise, the more you're going to be the go-to person. And if you're in a salaried role, that's your chance to ask for a pay rise or bonuses based on the fact that you're giving extra value outside your role. I know it's not that easy to get a pay rise, but the point being, if you can put a full case study together about what you've done, how it's helped, and obviously be that voice of expertise, then you're going to be invaluable in a company, whether you're a corporate or a small business. Staying on top of the changes, but advising your client or your boss on how they can use and implement those changes will keep you ahead. And lastly, be patient with the process. Make sure that your clients or boss understands it's not going to happen in a month or two. You'll need to slowly build your presence, your brand, your content, and it will take time to get to those bigger goals. And if they don't have time, then they need to throw a lot of ad money to reach it in half the time so they can increase the exposure. So hopefully that would help. Again, always be learning, and make sure you test stuff out, and don't worry about if something gets low engagement. Like I've seen some people delete posts because they've got like 1 or 2 likes. It depends what you share, but that's going to be part of the process. Some stuff will work and some won't. So I wouldn't delete it unless if it's got 0 and it's just sitting there for like weeks and weeks, fine, you may want to remove it from your timeline. But if you're trying new stuff, then don't delete the stuff that's got a few likes compared to 20 or 30, because it's still part of the process and people may still come back to it.
Absolutely. And you have to post regularly to learn what is working and what isn't working. If you don't do anything at all, then you're never gonna know, are you? So being testing, learning all the time, and like you said, always be learning. Really, really important. So Ravi, how can people find out more about you? So a lot of people here already, they know you because they've been watching every single month. But for those who not, where can they find you? I can see they put your YouTube channel on here.
Yeah, sure. So you can, you can just search. So me personally, you can just search for my name, Ravi Shukle on YouTube, or youtube.com/c/Ravi Shukle Marketing. You'll find it there. And obviously for Agora Pulse, we've also launched our new YouTube channel. So it's just Agora Pulse UK. If you search for that in YouTube, you'll find it. We're a super new channel, so our URL is all crazy and long. So they will work on shortening that. So just search Agora Pulse UK on Twitter and YouTube, and you can find us there. And for me personally, I'm hanging out on YouTube and Twitter. Just search for Ravi Shukle and you should find my channel.
Yeah, and Ravi has some great advice on there, picking up on being a social media manager and that kind of thing as well. And Agora Pulse as well, because this is sponsored by Agora Pulse. So if you do want an amazing social media management tool, we use it for all of our channels. Jade swears by Agora Pulse. It is fantastic, and we use it for our clients as well with the agency. The code is DW1 free, and you get 1 month free. agorapulse.com/digitalwomen. That's where you need to go to get that deal, basically. But it is really, really good. And there's a free version as well for people just starting out, isn't there, Ravi?
Yeah, there's a free version, and this code, if you are using your trial and it expires, you use this code to get an additional month free. So all the things we talked about today, managing your content, your customer service, your reporting, all of that stuff is built in. So feel free to give it a try, as it will definitely save you a lot of hours every week compared to Excel reports and all the other stuff that you have to manage. So give it a try, and then maybe let us know what you think. But a free trial means you can explore all the features and test it out for yourself.
Absolutely brilliant. And just finally from me, another vote from Agora Pulse from Claire Simper. That's fantastic. And just, finally from me, if you don't know what Digital Women is, just head over to digitalwomen.live. Or you can go over to the Facebook community or on LinkedIn, our LinkedIn community, which is growing hugely. Just last time I checked, there was 12,000 of you there. And there was 2,000 of you in January. So it's like absolutely been amazing on LinkedIn for us. So please come and join us there. And if you have any questions afterwards, just type them in the comments box, and Ravi or I will respond to them as well. Thank you so much, Ravi, for joining me again. I'm so looking forward to joining you again next month. Just one more thing I want to add, sorry, for you guys watching. Digital Skills event is coming up on the 11th and 12th of May. It's an absolutely incredible event, and it's going to talk to you about all of these things, but obviously more digital skills that you can acquire and what's important for the future and that kind of thing as well. Definitely worth coming along to. And you can find the link here. I don't know if Sam's got its hands to put it up on the screen. Otherwise, we'll just put it in the comments afterwards. So again, thank you so much, Ravi. We will see you again next month. You have been utterly amazing.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And like Lucy said, I will be jumping into the comments in the group across all the channels. So if there's something or you're watching this on the replay, it's not too late to leave your question, and I'll make sure I get back to all of you. So appreciate the opportunity, Lucy. And as always, it's been fun.